Okay, well, there's a lot happening in the climate space at the moment, with world leaders preparing to convene in Glasgow at the COP26 climate meeting. To make sense of all this, let's bring in Richie Merzian, who is the Director of Climate at the Australia Institute. Richie, it's lovely to see you.
You too, Holly.
Richie, we know Australia is talking about a net zero by 2050 target at the moment. Will this be enough in the lead up to COP26, as we know that they are also preparing to expand their fossil fuel sector?
Yeah, unfortunately it won't. I mean, net zero by 2050 alone is not enough, especially if you plan on expanding your fossil fuels. And Australia is the third largest exporter of fossil fuels in the world. We know that there's been 3 coal mines approved just this month, just in the last month. We know that there are new gas basins that are being tapped into that could increase Australia's emissions by over 2/3. And so you can't have your cake and eat it too. Net zero by 2050 means getting to zero emissions or as close to as possible. And that has to have an immediate impact. Unfortunately, this government doesn't seem to be interested in doing that, but having both more fossil fuels and the marketing around doing something on climate change. And when it comes to Glasgow in the UK, well, it won't actually turn to be a credible position, because the UK has asked for short-term ambition, short-term targets, increasing 2030, and they've also asked to consign coal to history. And that means no more coal mines. That means phasing out coal power.
Yeah, Richie, there's also the other side of this, right? Thousands of people, thousands of families rely on the coal sector at the moment. A lot of people financially are dependent on that. Is there the right plans and processes in place for when we do move away from coal, that those people won't be left high and dry because their lives do depend on it? Are the right plans and processes in place? Because we know China, on the other hand, is moving away from coal, and that's leading to a global energy crunch at the moment, right down the sector. It's having flow-on impacts. Are we actually prepared to move away from coal?
No, unfortunately, we're not. I mean, this is just like having your heads buried in the sand. I mean, look, there are 40,000 direct employees in the coal mining sector, about 25,000 in oil and gas, right? And so how do we prepare for that transition, which we know is inevitable? The best thing you can do is to stop tricking people that things won't change, and actually coming up with a transition plan. That's what Germany has done. That's what many other countries have actually sat down and negotiated with companies, with unions, with the community. A plan to phase out and make sure that these coal workers, these oil and gas workers, are taken care of. A transition plan is what we need, and it's also what's popular. We know that a phase out of coal and gas in a timely fashion that works with the changing supply and demand in the international markets is what actually works out best for all parties involved. Unfortunately, that's not what Australia is doing right now.
So when we look at China, who is struggling with that sort of energy crunch that we're seeing there, what is going to be used instead of coal? What's going to take the place of coal? Because we can't just get rid of it and operate the same without it.
No one is saying get rid of coal straight away. What the ask is that you don't open up new coal mines, you don't open up new oil and gas projects. That's what the International Energy Agency recommended if we are to avoid dangerous climate change and to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees. Their pathway has no new coal, oil, or gas going forward. Now, China has the opportunity to invest heavily into renewables, to invest heavily into the storage to firm that up as well. That's also clean energy, and also to electrify everything as well. We're seeing the uptake of electric mobility in China to just be astronomical. So we know that there is appetite to make this transition, and ultimately the opportunities are there, especially for a large economy like China.
Yeah, and it's a very delicate line, isn't it, between trying to keep the economy going, keep these people in jobs and make sure they're not left high and dry, but also looking after our planet as well and moving with the rest of the world. Now, you guys have actually released an advertisement today regarding the Australian government and fossil fuels. I just want to take a listen to that because I want to get your thoughts behind this advertisement and really what has gone into the process behind it. Let's take a listen.
Is trying to cheat on climate action again. Their plan for net zero emissions by 2050 is a fraud if gas and coal are allowed to expand. The government is plotting to double coal exports, open vast new gas fields, and prop up coal-generated power. Unless they halt dirty fossil fuels and power our nation with clean electricity, their net zero plan is worthless. Demand the government phase out gas and coal.
Richie, what are the thoughts and processes that go into an advertisement like this?
Right now, we're seeing a lot of effort being put into trying to sell net zero by 2050. We've seen a massive shift from some holdouts like the Business Council of Australia. Just 2 years ago, they said, or 3 years ago, they said that taking serious action on climate change would be economy wrecking. Now they've come out promoting that very same action they said was economy wrecking only a few years ago. We've seen a lot of flip-flopping and a lot of marketing behind climate positioning by big players, including the Australian government. What this advertisement is trying to do is just simplify it into one ask. Stop growing the problem. Stop opening up new coal mines and new gas and oil fields. It's that simple. Most emissions are coming from fossil fuels, their production and their consumption. If we want to save the climate, then we have to stop fossil fuels, and that starts by stopping the problem. And that starts by stopping growing the problem. So the first thing we need to do is to stop new coal mines, stop new gas and oil fields. And that's what this ad is really reminding people. Targets are great, but they require a lot more work to make sure that they have integrity. And that begins by actually stopping the growth of the problem. And hopefully this advertisement just brings it back down to a simple ask, because there's a lot of talk and a lot of spin around climate change. And really, the solution is actually quite simple. There's no major technological silver bullet that we need here. It's really just stop growing the problem and let's move forward with a phase-out plan from there.
Richie, I also wanted to get your thoughts. There is the results for looming for a Climate of the Nation 2021 report, which is due within a few days. I know you can't speak too much about it, but can you give us any details into what that might look like?
Of course. So Climate of the Nation is the longest running survey of Australian attitudes to climate change. It's been running since 2007. And what it's found is that concern for climate change is growing, that the appetite for solutions is growing as well, and that Australians want to see the government play a leading role on the global stage in taking action and not waiting for other emitters to do so. The Climate of the Nation 2021 comes out on Wednesday. Opposition leader Chris Bowen will be launching at 11 a.m. on an Australia Institute webinar. And what we'll see is that the COVID-19 pandemic has not dissipated that appetite for action, nor that concern for climate impacts. And really, this should provide a menu for the Australian government to draw on to strengthen its hand ahead of COP26. That's really the ambition of this report, to show that there is strong popular support across every demographic, age, gender, region versus city, or political persuasion. The appetite is there, the policies are popular. All that's missing is the political will from the federal government to take that forward.
Richie Merzian, lovely to see you as always. We'll catch up with you next week.
Pleasure.
The bottom 20% get nothing. They're really unfair tax cuts.
People want to see much stronger action from the government when it comes to climate change.
It's no coincidence that we have a wages crisis in Australia.
Transitioning to net zero emissions, it doesn't seem like there's much room for gas.